Hey everyone, and welcome to season 2 of Film Friday. I'm Lauren, your host and the film student, who's just going to be sharing some wonderful film things that I've learned, things that I find interesting, and things that you guys find interesting. This is a weekly series. I'm done with my little break in between seasons, so if you want to subscribe down below so that you don't miss any future videos. We're going to kick the series off with bang, as we pretend to be bank robbers, and learn about the film budgeting process. Now that I've got you all enticed, the truth comes out. This video, we're not actually talking about necessarily how to finance your film, but more what goes in the film budget itself. Because regardless of the size of your film, and regardless of the cost of the film, the basic elements will all be the same, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's talk film. So today I will be talking about the film budget, what goes into it, i.e. the categories. I will also touch on SAG-AFTRA, as well as software to use and other basic points like that. I learned about film budgeting this past spring in my producing class. I thought it was quite interesting, and I would love to share what I learned with all of you guys. First and foremost, let's just go over some basics about the budget. So the director is not in charge of the budget. The director will work with the producer, but it's the producer's job to come up with the budget and work with the department heads and teams to allocate funds. There's also always a wish version of the budget and a bottom line version. The bottom line is what's the minimum amount of money we can put into this to produce a film that we're okay with, and the wish version is like, if we could have basically all the money we needed, what could we make? Also, my dog is barking, so I guess he's really more for the wish version of the budget than the bottom line. He wants all the milk bones in the world delivered right now. The budget will contain a complete and thoroughly detailed, basically catalog of everything that's needed for the project. There's a top sheet that has the quick summary overhead cost, basic costs that you can just see like cast a number. But in the actual budget, it will be very detailed to the number of people, the hours they're working, when it comes to props, what the prop is, even down to like the color, and if it's 5 cents, like everything matters, and it's all very detailed, and you can really take a good stock of your project that way. You also make this budget after you make the schedule, because you have to consider days of filming, because not only does that determine how many hours cast members will be there, but also transportation costs, catering, etc. So you make the schedule first, and then you make the budget. A final basic about the budget: always err on the side of caution. Most budgets, as I will get into later, do also have a bit of a contingency fee kind of like built into it, but you always want to at least plan on having more money than you need. If the script is the creative Bible, then the budget is the financial Bible, according to my textbook. And I thought that was interesting and included it here. As much as we'd like to think that the film industry is wholly creative and not tainted, every creative decision comes with a price tag. So you have to think, is this worth it to me? Is this something that will make or break this film? Is this part of the vision? Is it essential? The standard studio software would be Movie Magic budgeting, EP budgeting, and there's also Studio Binder and other cheaper alternatives. You can also get a free template from like Studio Binder, somewhere like stuff you Google, but for example, Movie Magic, you can really put in a bunch more categories about your piece already, and it can help turn out a more specific detailed template for you to use. So it just kind of streamlines that process if you can afford it. Key thing to remember as well, all the money in the world will not save a bad script. If the story is bad, you can pour as much money into it as you want, but it won't save it. And you always want to maximize production value. You want to make your film look the best it can for the least amount of money. You don't need to have $1 million budget to make a movie that's worth $1 million. Now we can finally go to the actual budget. So we were going to start with just some categories, and I will do my best to remember to plot them on the screen as well. But if I forget, sorry, it's a crazy time, obviously. So I already mentioned the top sheet, and this is just the budget at a glance. So all the categories that I'm going to mention and talk about what goes into those categories, that would just be the category name itself on the top sheet, and I will include an example. Film budgets have two main sections: above the line and below the line. Above the line includes the script, actors, cast, producers, that kind of thing. And then below the line are pretty much all of the other costs associated with the film. transportation, location, food, equipment, blah, 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 blah. You will see what I include in this video. The first section is script and the rights. You need to make sure that you have all the rights to your film before you make it. If you end up not being able to secure the story rights, that's the end of your movie. You literally cannot make a movie unless you have the rights to the script. If you wrote the script, then congrats, you already have the rights. Also, if it's in the public domain, then everyone has the rights because it's public domain. Then moving on to the fourth section, because the other sections, as you'll see listed, they're just like not essential, I think, honestly, in most budgets. So we're just gonna... So then we have the cast. Now the cast includes everybody, not just your leading ladies. This includes your principals, your bits, your extras, day players, literally anyone that you see on screen, they count in the cast. Payment for cast members can range from literally nothing to a lot, depending on if they're union or non-union, what your budget is, what people are willing to work for. Even if you're in a union, sometimes a SAG actor or actress will be willing to work for less money than they necessarily always get, and there is a list of different rates depending on the size and scale of your production. There are also union rules that come into play when it comes to actors. There are penalties, fines, if you break rules, go over time, etc. And the only way to avoid those rules is to go non-union. Moving on to section 5, or the production section. When it comes to production, a good production manager, an assistant director, or AD, they are worth their weight in gold, no doubt about it. If you have no money, you can always rope in novices, and as long as you know them and you work hard, you're not gonna like totally blow your film. But if you find yourself paying a lot of money for a production manager, if they're worth it, then your film will do really well because of that investment. 6, we have the crew. Pretty much here, the size of the crew really determines the costs. And in a prior video, I talked about the members of the crew. So you can see if you're on that 3-person crew, obviously you're probably, first of all, if you're on a 3-person crew, you're probably not paying your crew wages, but you still have to provide for their food and their transportation. But if you're on that 30, 50-person set, you're paying these people. They're not working for free. You also have to consider union versus non-union. If you're paying for a union worker, you have to follow the rules, but they're probably also more experienced because they've had those hours, they're part of this community, and you get what you pay for. If you're not working in, say, a student film, you might find yourself with people who don't know their job as well, they're not as experienced, so you really have to weigh your options carefully when you decide to go union or non-union. Then we have 7, or the equipment. You really want to know the size of your equipment package before you approach a rental house. You want to make sure you know all the information you have so you can negotiate the best offer. You don't want to be caught unawares on anything. Some of your crew members may already come with their own equipment that they use, so then you don't need to buy that additionally or rent that additionally as well. This is another one where you want to have your wish list and your bottom line list. Then we have 8, or art. Props, wardrobe, set dressing, hair, makeup, etc. That all goes into art, into the art budget. And this is something that you really have to think about because you might find yourself losing a lot of money in this department if you haven't planned ahead really well and thought about, well, what do we really need? This is another one where you have to clarify that vision early on and make sure that money is going to something that will also be done in time for the production itself. Also consider what sets need to be built. If you need to pay to build an entire set versus just part of something, that will cost time and money. And then think about if you're getting a studio, what kind of set dressing do you need? Because putting a bed, a chair, a table, and a dresser in something does not make a bedroom. A bedroom needs to look lived in, so you need to think about that. And that all comes back down to money and cost and the budget. Then we've got 9, or location. This is another place where you could spend a lot of money on your exact ideal location. Some places you might be able to get for free or for a low rate if you're kind of exchanging exposure or there's a friend of the family or some kind of connection. But otherwise, you have to get the right to film somewhere. You may have to be concerned about damage and liabilities, or you have to get a license to film places. You can't just prop up, set up, and go. Also remember that pretty much you're responsible to get people to the set. Sometimes certain sets be like, well, if you're within an hour, within 2 hours, then you're responsible to get yourself there. But if it's beyond that, you as the producer or the director or whoever you are, you have to get people to the set. So you have to consider those expenses and those costs. Skipping 10, we're going to 11, or editing. So the main costs for this are your main editor and then the editing room if you're getting a full editing room for all of that stuff that comes in with sound, Foley artists, color set, etc. You could also have only one editor versus the main editor who then has assistants. but you don't want to kind of like brush this part under the rug. Also, remember the storage. You don't want to run out of memory cards. You don't want to run out of hard drives. You want to make sure you have extra storage and you backed everything up triply, because you don't want to lose literally all your movie at some point in the editing stage. That would absolutely suck. So I just kind of mentioned this, but now we're going on to sound. So this encompasses the Foley artists. This also would be ADR, any sound effects, music. If you're getting any original music or a whole score, that can get expensive. If you're a student filmmaker, you might be able to get someone in the music school to do something for free or very cheap. But once you kind of get up there, you're gonna have to start paying money for quality music, because you cannot always just keep using the free audio library. Cue free audio library music. 13 is about the lab, and this really only comes into play if you waited on film and you want to decide if you want to have it a film finish or a digital finish, and you need to involve like a film lab to do any kind of processing. Then we have 14 are the office expenses. The office expenses are like those things that you realize, oh yeah, like pens, Post-its, paper, the coffee machine, like things that you don't really think belong necessarily anywhere else, but that you need to keep yourself and your team running. Then we have 15 or insurance. You probably don't want to think about insurance. You don't want to think about anything going wrong. But you need to have this insurance because there's people's lives at stake, there's expensive equipment, properties. You need to pay this in advance, and a lot of places won't even let you film there if you don't have insurance, or rental houses make you have insurance before you take out the equipment. So often, like, it's kind of a package deal, like you can't just do it. But even if you kind of have the option to not have insurance, always have insurance, because no matter how much it might cost, if something goes wrong, you want to have that, or you could really fall down a horrible, horrible hole. Then we have 16, good old contingency. So the contingency is the buffer between, the budget and the insolvency, like going out, like not being able to finish the project. Generally, the contingency fee is 10% of the below the line costs. So if you're paying some actor millions of dollars, that doesn't come into the contingency part of the percentage. And it's just important to have this fee and make sure that's your little extra cash. So in case you start spending more money on something than you expected, you're kind of, you're covered. You don't have to worry about it. Just a quick note, we are wrapping up, but petty cash. Petty cash is just loose cash that maybe the producer gives the head of each department on a set day to take care of anything that just quickly comes up or whatever. And that all must be carefully accounted for. Everyone has their own envelope, and any dollar that's gone, you must have a reason for why, receipts, etc. And then just to finish up, remember that while we just spent this whole video talking about money and how money is so important, you do not want to lose sight of your creative purpose. You do not want to lose sight of why you started making this piece. And that wraps up this video. If you learned something, be sure to give it a nice thumbs up, comment down below literally anything you want, but it could be what you learned. And remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future videos, and I will see you next week. Bye!